Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 25 of our Redbox Studio Facebook live series. And this Saturday, we have someone with us who's going to talk a little bit about intellectual property. But before we bring him on, I would like to welcome all of you to ask your questions, of course, because this is a very interesting topic. I'm sure many of you would agree it's a very, very interesting topic. And many of us don't really know so much about it. So I really encourage all of you to either leave your questions in the comment section, or if you want to, join us on screen. So the criteria for joining us on screen is very simple, right? You have to turn on your video, because there's no point putting you on screen where all we see is a black box with your name. So if you want to join us on screen, make sure you're perfectly coiffed and you are willing to come and turn on your video. So I'll give you the link later for you to join us on screen. So that's the announcement that I wanted to make. For those of you who are watching this on replay, welcome once more. You can definitely look at the comments as well as all the interesting questions that are coming up for Vincent Teh of Gordian Consultancy. So the other thing that I also wanted to mention is that for those of you who know, this is the 25th episode, and this is to me is a milestone, because if a year ago you asked me, would I be doing this Facebook Live? It's live video anyway. I would say not really, because I'm not the kind to do live video. But look at what happened over the course of a year, right? So if you've been watching us for the last, 25 episodes, thank you so much. If you've been watching us for the last 25 episodes, please put a yes in the comments so that I know that you've been following us and our business topics for the last 25 episodes. And if you have any topics that you want us to cover, or anybody you feel that should be perfect for this medium, let me know too, so that we can invite and bring those people online with us, so that they can share their business knowledge with us. So the purpose of this series is to bring people with business knowledge to share with the greater business community out there. So it doesn't matter where you are, because we're virtual, so the person can be anywhere in Malaysia or even across the world. So that's what I wanted to say. Okay. The second thing is that many of you know I also do run my own podcast, and that podcast is called Womenpreneur Asia. So I've just launched season 2, and yesterday I published the second episode of season 2. So if any of you are interested in listening, because podcast is the audio format, please do listen to it at womenpreneurasia.com. Okay, I've got a couple of announcements before we get started and bring Vincent on. There's also 2 things that are coming up. Of course, after Vincent's Facebook Live session with us today, our next Facebook Live session happens on the 15th of May, and that will be with a friend of mine who is a writer. So she's going to come and share with us how she succeeded as a writer in the writing industry. Okay. And the other thing I want to say is, before we even bring Vincent on, is that I'll be actually collaborating with a friend of mine, and we are doing a webinar on HR matters. So if you want to find out more about hiring better, please find out more details at redboxstudio.com. Okay, now that our introductions are over, let me put Vincent on screen with us. Hi, Vincent.
Hi, Krista. I saw from the comment there's my old high school friend Andrew who's joined us as well. So I say hi, okay, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. Yes, so Andrew is also someone who follows our work closely and who has been supporting us in many of our events when we had our face-to-face events back then, like in China House. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know Penang is so small, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So for those of you who are watching, if you like, just say hello so I can pull it up for Vincent to know that you're actually watching, or you're a friend of his, acquaintance of his. So Vincent, before we get started on today's topic, you have a book to share with us.
Yes, I do. It's quite an interesting book. It's called Shakespeare Not Stirred. So I don't know if you can see it properly. So it's if you like literature, if you like Shakespeare, and if you like your drinks, it's quite a good book because it pairs cocktail recipes with the characters or the drama that is in Shakespeare's books. So one of it was like, can I compare or compare to a summer's day? It's a horrible pun, but yeah, I'm quite ready for that joke. So this is quite an interesting book. It's apart from cocktails, it's also got some other finger food recipes as well. So yeah, if you're interested in literature and it's a book that is best read with a glass of wine or two or three.
Okay,
Yeah.
or three.
Yeah, or a bottle. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so before we even get into my book recommendation, I wanted to let everyone know that Vincent's arm is in a cast.
Yeah, I can show it to you.
Okay, so tell us what happened, Vincent. Why are you in a cast?
I was playing with my dog in the yard, so we were running around. And my dog is a bit special. He was he's a rescue dog, so he was abused when he was like 2 months old. So they broke his spine. But you know, the lady who rescued him managed to get him to walk and even run. He's strong enough to run into me and take me down. Yeah, so he plowed into me while we were both running, and I fell. I tried to break the fall with my hand, and I fractured my, I think it's the radial head. Yeah, so I have to be in a cast for the next month.
Okay, so that's why when we were chatting just now, he was saying that it's a bit difficult for him to type, right?
Yeah.
We already have a comment. This for Jian Ento says, where can I get this book?
I actually cannot remember because I'm one of those people who I'm a bibliophile. Yeah, I like to collect books. The problem is I don't read as fast as I collect them. So I'm not sure. I guess if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. I can't remember where I got this from, and there's no price tag as well. I think my
your wife bought it.
I think my wife bought it for me. Yeah.
Knowing that you like literature and your drink.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So Janan, I hope you've got your answer, but I'm sure you Google it.
I'm sorry. Yeah. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Janan, for that question. So okay, today my book recommendation is this. The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau. Okay, I was telling Vincent I was going to mangle this author's name, and I don't know how his name is pronounced, but this is how I pronounce it. So I wanted to bring this book on because I read this book some time ago. It's not like a totally new book, but I liked it because it has a lot of very practical advice if you want to start up. And why I brought this book on is because it's very apt. Today we're going to talk about intellectual property. And intellectual property is also very, very relevant for startups, right? And when you're starting out in your business, you're talking about your brand, your products, and all that. So this one, what I particularly like about it is that it tells you stories of people who have done it on $100. Just start out with the bare basics, right? And one of the key things that why I put is that there is this specific one-page business plan that you can fill up. And then, for instance, things like what will you sell? Who will buy it? How will your business idea help people? Or even what will you charge? How will you get paid? And how else will you make money from this project? As well as other things like how will customers learn about your business? How can you encourage referrals? As well as obstacles, challenges, and open questions, specific concern or questions that people have about your product or service. So I think this book is really, really practical. So if any of you are, even if you're not a startup, I think all of us can always go back and relook and relearn some of the stuff in this business book. So check this out. I'm sure this one easily you can Google it and find out where you can buy it. Okay. So now let's get into what we're here for, Vincent.
So
Vincent is a lawyer. Can I announce that?
Well, I'm sort of a lawyer, not practicing. I think it's more accurate to call me an IP attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
So introduce a little bit about yourself and your business. And yeah, because I
Okay.
already written a little bit about you, but I think the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
from you.
yeah. So, okay, I'm not a very interesting person to begin with, but so I am a IP attorney. What I do is we help people with their intellectual property problems. Most of the time, it is problems because in Malaysia, right, nobody would think about IP unless they're in trouble. So actually, that's true to most lawyers. You won't think of your lawyer friends unless you're in trouble. Yeah. So we started Gordian IP in 2017. So it's been 4 years. Yeah. And we are mainly an IP firm, but we also help people with some of their legal issues, or sometimes we help them a bit with their branding as well. Yeah, but our bread and butter is still intellectual property. Yeah.
And before we got on live, we were talking a
Hmm.
little bit about your company and some of the very sustainable practices that you uphold as a company, right? So one of the
Yeah.
interesting things that Vincent was telling me is that they are 90% paper free. And was
Yeah.
that
So
a conscious decision?
yeah, it because we started our company quite well. It's not well quite recently, about 4 years ago. By then, technology has caught up. Most of the things that we can do, or most of the things that we need to do, can be done online, can be done basically on a computer. So we started this company knowing that we want to be a company that is socially what's the word for it? Socially aware, I think. Some people say there's a very woke company. But yeah, we prefer socially aware. So one of the things that we want to do is to be eco-friendly. So that's why we set up from the get-go to be a paper-free company as much as possible. Yeah.
And you also do some CSR projects with the community, right?
Yeah, so we worked with normally communities that are less fortunate. So one of our project is with the refugee communities in KL, in particular the Chin Myanmar refugees. So we worked together with a school in Pandan Indah. It's called St. Mary's Agape Mission School. So we started a entrepreneurial training, and also sort of like a business, to practically just to break the chain of poverty, because poverty is when you're poor, you have less opportunity, and you probably your children can't go to school, so they have even fewer opportunities compared to you. So we focus mostly on that, help them have sort of like a stable income, and also at the same time we channel the profit into the school so that the kids will have better education, because as a refugee in Malaysia you have close to zero rights. So you have no access to work, you have no access to education. So all of these really just kept them in the poverty cycle. So that's what we were trying to do, to break the cycle, and hopefully we'll be able to benefit a few of them. Yeah, that's one of the things that we did. We're also helping St. Nicholas. If you're from Penang, you know St. Nicholas. Yeah, so that's something that we're supposed to start doing, but because of the MCO, we've pushed it back a little bit. Yeah.
And how would that? What kind of help would that be? Is it like
So it's similar to what we did with the refugee community. Is to basically inject a bit of business knowledge and business sense into the running of because it is a charity, and a lot of times charity, I think, can benefit from having a business point of view to how they run things. Yeah, so that's what we're going to help them with. Yeah, especially with their products and their services, how to market it, how to brand it.
I think many
Yeah.
years ago, also we as a company also went into St. Nicholas to find out more how we could see which areas we could help them. So I think it's also good for us to focus back on the charities or the non-profits in our community, see how we can actually make the community better. So, okay, that's the CSR portion of your business. So now let's get right into business. So before we even get started, I just want us to define what intellectual property is. So there could be many definitions playing in people's minds, but what exactly is intellectual property?
Okay, I think a good place to start is to think of it as, well, the name itself is a good indication of what it is. It's an intellectual property. So what it does is to take your intellectual output and turn it into property and turn it into an asset. So, because an idea is just floating somewhere, in space, is intangible. So how are we going to make money from that idea? In order to do that, we need to put it down and turn it into property, because with property, then you have value. So that's pretty much a very brief introduction to what intellectual property is. And I think it would be better if I pull up the slides that I prepared, and I can show you the different types of intellectual properties that there are.
Okay.
So I'll try to do this with my left hand. So do bear with me. Not very good at it. Okay.
For those who just join us, why Vincent say he has to do his left hand is because his right hand is in the cast.
Yeah, and I blame my dog for it.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing that we always tell people is that every business has intellectual property. I don't know if you know that, but almost every single business has intellectual property. In fact, intellectual property is in everything and everywhere. Each day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go, sometimes you even dream intellectual property. Well, at least I do. Yeah, so it's every day you will encounter hundreds and thousands of intellectual property. You see it, you listen to it, you smell it, you even eat it. So that's something to bear in mind. But when we talk about intellectual property, most of the time we try to break it down into 4 main areas of intellectual property. That is trademark, patent, design, and also copyright. So that's the 4 main area. There's also trade secret, that is sort of an intellectual property, and there's also geographical indication. I don't think we'll be talking about this too, because those two are not very common, especially if you are a SME or if you are a startup. So we'll focus on the 4 intellectual property. So, like when I said every business has intellectual property, that is not really an overstatement, because if you think about it, almost all businesses would have trademark, would have a brand. Although we don't like to conflate trademarks and brand, because they are sort of a little bit different, but for most people, for the layperson, when they talk about brand, most of the time they are really talking about trademark. So I have this example from Redbox Studio. Yeah, your website. So as you can see there's a trademark there. Okay, and this is from Hidden Bars. I don't know if any of you have been there. So as you can see, trademark is literally everywhere. So almost every business would have a trademark. So, and this is from my own company's website. This is interesting because it shows you trademarks can actually take different forms. So here you see it in 3 of its most common forms. One is a logo, and then the second one, Gordian, is a word. So a word can be a trademark. And the third one is the tagline. The tagline itself can also be a trademark.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I want to ask you that because I saw the 3 arrows. I was thinking like, okay, that's the logo and that's the word, and then there's also the tagline. Wow.
So, in fact, most things can be considered a trademark if you use it as such. So we have these 3 trademarks are known as traditional trademarks. We have the non-traditional trademarks that are shapes. So if you think of Toblerone chocolate, the triangular Toblerone chocolates, not the box, the chocolate itself, the shape of the chocolate itself is a trademark. Yeah. So like if you've seen the Lindt Easter Bunny, the gold Easter Bunny, that itself is a trademark as well. If you watch Netflix, every time the show comes on, it goes, ta-dum. The sound is a trademark. So a lot of things can be considered trademarks if they are used as such. So if they're used to denote services or products that come from one company, then we will consider it a trademark.
Okay.
And so the next thing we can talk about will be copyright. So if you have any writers here, even if you're a copywriter, or if you are into literature, you write books, poems, guidebooks, those would fall under copyright. So they are protected by copyright. And I don't know if you can hear, it's supposed to have music as well. So if you are in media, this is a good example as well, because in this music video, we have multiple copyrights involved. So you have copyright that is attached to the video, you have copyright that is attached to the song, and within the song itself, it is split into 2. Copyright, literary work, because of the lyrics. The lyric is considered literary work. The music is considered artistic work. So most of the time when we see copyright, we see them in a bundle. Like here in the book, we say that the book has copyright, but actually it's a bundle of copyright because the picture itself, the images, there's a copyright for that. And for the writing, there's another copyright for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would think that copyright is actually more towards people who are, or businesses that are into arts, but it's not true, because if you have a website, you will have copyright. That's why you see most of the website at the bottom. You see copyright 2020 at something, 2021 at the company's name. Is because the content of a website is also copyright protected.
Yeah.
So that could be your blog, it could be the images that you've posted online, it could be the photos. So don't think of copyrights as something that is only for the the artsy-fartsy people. But in every business, you will have copyright. Almost every business, you would generate copyright.
So after this, we're going to look at everything with copyright eyes.
Yeah, it's true, because recently we have a client who was asking us about, they are a tech company. So what they do is they have a system for runners, marathoners, especially marathon runners. So they turn it into sort of like a game that you can track using your smartphone. So the rules that they've written for their game is actually copied by another company. So in that case, it is a copyright infringement because they've copied the rules wholesale. Yeah. So if you're a game manufacturer, your manual is also a copyright protected work. Yeah.
So a lot of things are copyrightable.
Yeah, a lot of things are copyrightable. The good thing about copyright is it's an automatic right. You don't actually need to do anything in order to own that right. Once you've written something, even if it's a horrible love song that you've written when you're in high school to your love interest back then, you actually are the copyright owner of that horrible song.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting because and it lasts for 50 years after you died. So So copyright, the duration for copyright protection is 50 years after the death of the author.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why
But
sometimes
what happens after 50 years? After that?
after 50 years, it becomes public property. So that's why you see a lot of sometimes music, like classic music. You can perform it without having to pay anybody if it is, let's say, written by Bach or written by Beethoven, because they've definitely passed on more than 50 years ago. But you see, the recording itself, every recording of the music has copyright to it. So while you can gather a bunch of musicians to play the music, you cannot take the music from, let's say, somebody, let's say the MPO has a performance, and then you take the music and use it on your website, for example, or you sell it. You can't, because they have the copyright to the recording.
Okay. Can I ask this question?
Yeah.
We actually have a question coming in, but I just want to ask this question. I know a lot of people like to use images that they pulled out from Google for their own presentations, slides, whatever that they're producing. So can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. Most of the time, it will be copyright infringement. If you are doing it as part of your business, so if you're making money out of it, you're definitely infringing somebody's copyright, unless the image itself comes royalty free and you are able to get the license to use it in business. So what a lot of designers normally do, they will go to Pixabay. It's Pixabay. That's where you can find images that are free for you to use personally and sometimes even commercially. So if you use those, you're all right. But if you just take any random pictures from Google and use it on your products, for example, then you are actually infringing the copyright of either the photographer or whoever owns the picture. Yeah, so that's something that you really need to be careful, because especially if you're using it to make money, because copyright, we have a defense of fair use. Fair use means that you can take somebody's copyright protected work and use it in certain circumstances, like if you are teaching, it's fine. If you are using it as a critique, it's fine. But usually there's quite a fine line between that, because if you use it to teach, but you charge people to attend your classes, then we may have a bit of a problem there as well, because you're technically using it for trade. You're technically using it to make money. Yeah. So it's always best to check to see whether the image that you're using is royalty free and whether you have the license to use it in your business.
Okay. Before we go on, okay, we have a question here. So can I pull up the question so we can look at it? So this person says, I've often noticed that some celebrities have participated in some kind of advertising campaign. Can a person's appearance be an intellectual property? Good question. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So that is, it's not intellectual property in a strict sense, but it is, because so it's called image rights. So if a celebrity is endorsing a product, he is technically selling his image to make money. So in a sense, it is sort of an intellectual property, but it doesn't fall under any of these four main categories. So, does that answer your question? It is IP, but it doesn't fall under any of these four categories, because it's more of an image rights. It's very similar to copyright, but there's also quite a lot of differences as well.
Okay, thank you. So let me just also put up, before we forget that, let me just put up this link so that if people want to join us, because I saw someone come in and go out, so I'm not too sure whether that. Okay, so for those of you who want to join us on screen to ask your questions, please use this link, and then you can be on the screen with us. But the only criteria is you have to turn on your video. So if you're not ready to turn on the video, it's a bit difficult because we want to see your face, right? Otherwise, it kind of ruins the whole idea of like we see on your screen, but we see you on screen, but we don't see you. So for those of you who want to join us on screen, remember, just key in this URL and you'll be able to be with us on screen with me and Vincent. And you can ask your questions, or if you have something that you really want to, talk about, you can ask it. So, okay, let's continue.
Okay, so I'll just quickly run through the last two. So we have patents. So patent is there to protect inventions. So if you look here, we've got two patented products. On the left, they are both invented by Malaysian. So I'm sure if you're Malaysian, you would have seen the first product.
Yes, and we also have it in our house.
Yeah, so that actually is a patented product, and is invented by Dato Hugh. He's a serial inventor, so he has invented many things, and the interesting thing is he's only got primary school education.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really amazing.
So you show that you can invent anything. Doesn't matter what background you're from.
Yeah. So as long as your invention is solving a problem, then you can patent it. So the thing that you invent is solving an existing problem that nobody has a solution to, you can patent it. And if you see on the right, you wouldn't think that this has a patent to it, right? But it has as well. I don't know if you noticed this. A couple of years ago, a lot of students, a lot of kids are wearing loom bands.
Yes.
Yeah.
My niece had one. My niece had the loom band.
Yeah. So that actually is patented as well. So this gentleman here, Mr. Chong, he lives in the US, but he's originally from Malaysia. And as long as you have any sort of link to Malaysia, if you're successful, we'll call you Malaysians.
If you're not, we just don't know you, right?
Yeah, balik kampung. So so that's the reason why I wanted to show this two invention is that because whenever people think of invention, they always have this idea that it's done by a huge company with huge deep pockets, but it's actually not true. A lot of inventions are actually invented in the kitchen, on the kitchen table. So you may actually have an invention that. Sorry, come again.
And a practical invention.
Yeah, it is. So the Post-it notes that you have, that you use every day, that was actually patented. Even the bendy straws that you use, that was also patented. So anybody could have an invention that is patented.
So you put on a thinking caps right now. What can we invent?
So the next one will be industrial design. Industrial design protects the aesthetic, or in IP we call the aesthetic element of a product. But in layman's term is if it looks good, if it's a design, you can protect it as an industrial design. So the two examples here you can see is, if you look on the left, that's Killer. If you look on the right, that's a watch by, if I remember correctly, it should be by either Dior or Cartier. Yeah. So if you have a design for a chair, for example, a design for a pen, a design for hats, cars, you can actually protect it with industrial design. So most of the time, a company has more than one intellectual property. So if you look back, remember we said that my company's website actually contains 3 trademarks: the logo, the word, and also the tagline. But the logo itself can be protected under copyright because it is a work of art. It doesn't have to be pretty. As long as it's a work of art, it can be protected as a copyright. So sometimes you have products that are protected by both copyright and also industrial design. So fabric, the design for a fabric can be protected under copyright or industrial design. It depends on how you normally deal with them. So if your fabric is a one-off thing, most of the time it'll be covered under copyright. If it's a mass-produced fabric, you can register it as an industrial design. So this is Nala. So her design can actually be registered.
She was in the news recently.
Yeah, she's the one who got into a bit of a trouble recently. Yes, yeah. So a very good example of how one product can actually is actually a combination of many intellectual property is your smartphone, the smartphone that you use every day. So on average, each smartphone will have hundreds of thousands of IP attached to it. So if we look here on this chart or this table, you can see that the design of the phone is actually covered by, could potentially be covered by trademark, design, and copyright. The name of the phone, yes, you have it under trademark. Fonts, the fonts that you use. Imagine each phone you have hundreds of fonts that you can choose from. So you can see intellectual property is really in everything, and most of the time it is saturated with intellectual property. Yeah.
Now we know where to look. Right? Now we look closely around us, because in the past we just thought it was just a logo, name of a brand or a product, right?
Yeah. So very simply, if you look at your phone, the design of the phone, the outward appearance of the phone probably has an industrial design protecting it. The source code in all of the systems has copyright protecting it. All of the little app icons that you see in your phone, it has trademark protecting it. So your phone is really a treasure trove of intellectual property.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a question here from Andrew. So Andrew says, can you share a bit about Creative Commons?
So, okay, I think I'll just turn this off.
You want to?
Yeah.
Or you want to finish up with this one first before we move on?
No, it's okay. Yeah. So Creative Commons arises because of intellectual property. Because, like I said, copyright is in. If you've written anything, if it's substantial enough, it will have copyright attached to it. So what happens if you want to share it with the whole wide world without claiming anything? So like the example that I've given just now about Pixabay, they've got photographers, artists who has put their work online so that people can benefit from it. You can use it. That is considered as Creative Commons. So we can leave it there for people to use, and we also set for a lot of the things, especially if it's software. We can set a rule to say that let's say if you're using my copyright protected source code to create your own software, your software will also have to be free for everyone else to use. So that's one way. That's one thing that you can do as well. So if you want to make sure that your software will benefit everyone, that's something that you can do. So even though you still have copyright over it, you're saying that I will not claim any right over this thing that I've created. That's called the Creative Commons.
Okay. So it's basically your good work out there in the open, public, for other people to use and to share.
Yes.
Not
that's
for
right.
commercialization, basically just to help people.
It depends. You can actually set it so that another company can use it and also commercialize it. So once they've used that part, they can sell the software, but the part that has your source code, that is still free for somebody else to use. Whatever they add on can be claimed by them.
How do they know which part is? free and which part is not.
If it's a computer program, you'll be able to you look behind the veil, then you see all the source code, and somebody with technical ability will be able to tell which one is copied from where. I'm not such a person, yeah. So, but somebody with the technical abilities can do that.
Okay. So Andrew, I
Yeah.
hope Vincent has answered a little bit about Creative Commons, and of
I'm
course
sure he knows
maybe
about it already.
he knows about it. He just
Yeah.
wants to ask it still.
Yeah.
But actually, it's a good question, Andrew, and I'm really thankful that you asked the question because a lot of people may not even know about Creative Commons.
Yeah.
That is something that all of us should know about. So thank you, Andrew, for asking that question. For those of you who want to ask questions, please put them in the comments or join us on screen. That is the best part, right? Join us on screen. We want to ask the questions. Okay, so let me hide this. So he says, yes, source code can be revealed. Yes, thanks. Okay,
Yeah.
so Vincent, before we move on, do you have more slides or can I ask my question?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So now that we know a little bit about what intellectual property is, so I think many of us here in today's session would like to know, how do we monetize and commercialize it? Because we all want to know about the catching part, right?
Yeah. So, because we call it intellectual property, it is a property. It's considered a personal property. So you can think of it as any sort of assets. One of the things that I like to explain, especially to Malaysian Malaysian audience, is that imagine you're buying a durian orchard. Durian season is coming, so imagine you're buying a durian orchard. How do you know what is the value of that durian orchard? So a lot of times people will say, how many trees are there? How big is it? What is the quality of the soil? Do we have sufficient water? What types of durian do you have in there? Which is true, all those things will affect the value of your durian orchard. But what we most often take for granted is that you must first make sure that the durian orchard is yours. So how are we going to do that? Let's say if I buy a durian orchard, how am I going to prove that I am the owner? If I can't prove that I'm the owner, I can't sell it off. So if I own a durian orchard, the least I can do is to put a fence around it to make sure that no one can come in and take all of my durian away, right? So that's how you make money from your intellectual property. You first need to make sure that you own it. And for many intellectual property, you cannot say that you have it unless you register it. So think of or register it or claim it. So imagine you have an invention. You've invented something, or you invented the egg boiler. How are you going to say that it's yours? You can say that I've invented it, but once that egg boiler is sold in the market, somebody in China can, with 3D printing as well nowadays, somebody in China can do it within an hour. So once it's out there, it is part of the commons. So everybody can take your invention and make their own product and sell it. So with supply being so high, you know that the value of your product is low because they can get it from anyone else. Why would they want to get it from you? Intellectual property, if it is protected, gives you exclusive rights. It gives you monopoly. With monopoly comes control. With control comes value. So that control is, most importantly, the first thing is that you must make sure that you can continue to use it. Because for intellectual property like trademarks, for example, we've had many clients come to us with their trademark having been taken by somebody else. So what happens is that they've used it for a long time, they didn't bother to register it, somebody else registered it, and now they are legally the owner because their name appears on paper that is recognized by the government to say that they are the owner. It's like a title deed. Whoever has a title deed is the owner to a property, right? And now that they have the title deed and they register it with the IP office, they become the legitimate owner officially of that trademark. So what you need to do now is then have to say that I actually am the original owner. And how are you going to do that? The only way to do that is to go to court. And we all know if you were to go to court, you at least have to pay up to 5 figures to get your trademark back. Whereas if you compare it with a simple registration, most of the time, if you're SME or a startup, you're probably going to pay around 1,000 to 3,000 ringgit for a trademark registration for 10 years. So that's about 1 to 300 per year. It's cheaper than your personal insurance because you pay 1 to 300 every month. So that's ownership. Ownership gives you control and it allows you to continue to use it without anybody saying you can't use it. And the second control is that it allows you to choose who to use it. So imagine you own a patent for an invention. If you do not have the capacity to mass produce it, you can go to a factory and say, okay, I will license this to you to manufacture. You then use it. You can sell it, but you pay me royalty. You pay me a percentage of your profit, or you can do it however you want. So that control allows you to monetize it by allowing other people to use it. A very simple example would be, let's say you buy a house. You are the owner of the house, so you must make sure that you are allowed to use it. So you must have your title deed, you must have registered it with the land office. And once you are sure that you can use it, you can choose to use it or choose not to use it. You can choose to rent it out to somebody to make money. But with intellectual property, because it's an intangible property, it's like a house with an unlimited number of rooms. Because even if I pass you my blueprint for my invention, I could pass the same to another person in another country to do it. So we can continue to license it or rent it out, so to speak, to various businesses to produce it, and we make royalty or rent from it. So that's how we, in a very simple term, that's how we make money from intellectual property. We can also think about selling it. So let's say if you have a brand that is very old, hundreds of years old, and it's a brand that is well regarded and famous, you could probably sell it for at least a couple of thousands. If not, you can sell it for hundreds of thousands. So it depends on how widely known it is. So most of the companies in the big companies in the S&P 500, their brand alone, you can sell it for trillions. So that's how
important.
how important it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were talking, it just reminded me of what I read last night, because I was reading about the 9-year-old boy, Ryan of Ryan's World, the YouTuber who's made, I think, 29.5 million on YouTube. He's like this fantastic 9-year-old YouTuber who's making millions online. And even for him, and this is the interesting part, even for him, he has spin-off characters that he has now turned into animation. So he has this very interesting, one of the many characters he has is Gus the Gummy Gator. So Gus the Gummy Gator is now a puppet, like a puppet thing, but it's also an animation. So even for a 9-year-old boy, his parents have taken this whole thing about him, around him, and all this, I guess, all the favorite characters and all that, turn them into intellectual property, right?
Yeah.
That you can license and get people to come in and use that Gummy Gator thing. I mean, Gummy Gator is just one of them, but it just reminded me that even kids these days can do licensing, like for him.
Yeah. If you think about it, Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
It's written for Emil's nephew.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Peter Rabbit.
Yeah.
Beatrix Potter. It was written for her nieces and nephews. Yeah, so she was basically writing letters to her nieces and nephews with these stories and characters, and which eventually she turned into a book. And she was at one point the richest woman in the UK, one of the richest women in the UK.
Which also reminds me of Harry Potter, right? And the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, well, she's got loads of money.
Yeah, she's right.
Yeah,
Totally floating in
yeah.
So that
So,
that also is like a way, right? I mean, we're talking about making commercializing or monetizing your IP is also through areas of this where you can create characters or toys or things like that based off your character.
Yeah. So actually, if you think about it, all businesses, because all businesses have IPs, and if you look, we recently there's a research that was done by the European the EPO and the EU IPO. They've realized that a startup or an SME with one let's say an SME or a startup owns one intellectual property, they make 65% more money than the ones who do not own any. If they own two intellectual property rights, they make 78% more. And if they own three and above, they make 95% more than companies who do not own any intellectual property rights. So the ownership of intellectual property right is actually a good key indicator of how successful your business is. Because as a business grow, it will generate more and more IP. If you are a product manufacturer, you have different products under different names. Imagine IKEA with hundreds and thousands of names of their products. If you are a writer, you have more books. If you are a software developer, you have more updates for your software. You have different software. So a company's success, the ownership of intellectual property is a key indicator of how successful a company is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are almost at the top of the hour. So I want to ask you the final question, which is what tips can you give our viewers today about if right now they started to think, okay, I should take care of my IP more since it is so lucrative and I also can see the value in it. So what probably your top 3 tips if you could share with our viewers?
The most important thing is to realize that you have IP. Sometimes you like an IP attorney could very easily go into your company and say, this has IP, this has IP, this has IP, this has IP, this has IP. For you, it may just be trash, something that I've left behind from lunch yesterday. So to know that your IP is there is the first step. The second step is to know how to protect it. Is it worth protecting? Because not all IP is worth protecting. Because sometimes, if it's a blog that you sent out to a lot of people, and you don't mind people copying, because if they copy it, especially if they copy it and they say that you are the one who wrote it, then you're not going to be too bothered about it. That's where Creative Commons come in. But you need to know where you stand, whether you can own it or not. It's like a house. You need to know that at least I am on record the owner of my IP. So that's the second thing. Realize you have IP, protect your IP. And the third is to consider how we can use that IP. Because sometimes, this is true for a lot of universities, they are sitting on mountains and mountains of patents, but they have no way to monetize it. They have no way to manufacture that thing. So we would need to work with other people. So it could be getting in investors. And funny enough, whenever you talk to an investor about your business, the first thing they'll tell you is that idea yours? Do you own it? Can anybody else make it? So there's 3 questions that they will probably ask you first. Because if everybody else can make it, why would they invest in your company? So that comes back to the second thing, ownership. So realize that you have IP, protect it, and use it. If you can't use it yourself, think about licensing it. So that's the monetization part.
Okay. So that would be the first step, right, for them to realize that, okay, I have it.
Yeah.
First of all,
Yeah.
is it mine? I have it, is it
Yeah.
mine? Yeah.
Yeah.
And from there only you can take the adequate steps to protect it and to commercially monetize it. Okay,
Yeah.
so for those of you who want to ask any questions, you have the last 5 minutes to do so. If there are no more questions, Vincent, what would be a good place for them to find you, connect with you, or get probably extra information if they want to? I know you got a blog. Well,
Yeah,
written.
yeah, thanks. That's mostly by my partner Joel. He writes very well. So you can follow us on Facebook. It's Gordian IP. That is normally where we post all our things. You can follow us on Instagram as well, or you can go to our website, www.gordianip.com.
So those are
Yeah.
the places I can find you.
Yeah.
Are you on LinkedIn, Vincent?
I am
You
on
are?
LinkedIn as well. Yes, yeah. If you look for Vincent Teh, I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay. Just don't go and ask him about the other legal advice.
Well, I can point you to, like, because we were talking just now, Krista and I, about how if people think you are a lawyer, they will ask you all sorts of questions. It's just like sometimes my doctor friends get asked about weird things, especially if they are guys. They're like, I've got this thing on my penis. What is it? So for lawyers, it's the same as well. If they think you're a lawyer, they're like, I'm divorcing my wife. Can you help me? That's the one thing that I get quite a bit. I need to sell my property. Can you help me? So I can't really help you with those things. I can point you to my lawyer friends who may be able to help you with that. Yeah. So even if you have questions like that, feel free to just give me a holler.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending 1 hour with us. If you found this useful, please remember to like our page or even share this out. Even no need to share it out, just tag your friend so that your friend knows that there has been this 1 hour knowledge session for them to at least know, right, that they're sitting on lots and lots of IP if they are.
Yeah.
And most of us are. It's just that we haven't realized that we are sitting on IP. Until Vincent came out and told us that actually we are. So there are a lot of things that I think all of us need to also ask ourselves, right? Like you were saying, which are the ones that we want to really use in our business?
Yeah.
And are they worth protecting? Because not everything is like worth protecting, right? So it could be certain things that we want to protect. And after we protect it, then only we can start thinking about making money from what we want to protect.
Yeah.
So that I think that will probably encapsulate what we talked about today about intellectual property and how we can really monetize it. And my final question is also for people who are just starting out. Is it more important for them, or is it also important for like maybe matured or established businesses when they want to IP?
I would say it's more important for startups and SMEs to protect their IP. Mostly because as a startup and SME, you're probably quite skint. You probably don't have a lot of money to fight legal battles. Like big companies, they have deep pockets. They can sue you even if they do not have. They know that they're on shaky grounds, but they can sue you and wait for you to run out of money, and they win the case. You as a startup or as SME, you do not have that money. So the only thing that you can do is to register your IP, to protect it, because most of the time you're only going to spend a couple of thousand compared to the tens of thousands that you need to spend in order to get your IP back if somebody has stolen it, or to stop somebody else from using it. So even if you are looking for investors, the first thing that they will ask you is whether you have monopoly over your idea or the monopoly over your product. And another thing, very important thing, is that when you're talking to investors, sometimes you don't know whether you can trust them. And most of the time, if they're big enough, they won't sign an NDA with you. They're like, hey, we're such a big company, like, you don't trust us. Like, there's no trust between us. We can't do business. So you can't get them to sign an NDA. You have to. Then there's no way for you to protect your intellectual property. So it's important to protect them first, register it, before you actually review it. And for patents and design, that's very important as well, because patent and design requires novelty. It requires it to be new. If it's no longer new, no one can own it. So if I've invented something, so if, for example, if I calculated a way to tell you what the 40 number is going to be this week, if I tell it to you and you tell it to everyone, we will all have to share the prize money. That's the same thing with IP as well. So in order for it to be yours, you first have to claim it. You first have to have it registered to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Vincent, for a very
Thank you.
enlightening 1 hour. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure all our audience also did enjoy.
I hope
as well.
so.
Yes, definitely. I'm sure, of course, nobody wanted to join us on screen, maybe because I enforced the video rule. But whoever was here, thank you for asking your questions. Thank you for listening in for the 1 hour, and come back on the 15th of May, because I'll be talking to a writer who's going to share with us how she started off as a writer and how she succeeded in the writing industry and how she has spun off from writing into something else, which is very close to her heart. So this is part of also ongoing knowledge sharing with the business community in Penang and of course across Malaysia. So thank you once more, Vincent.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I hope that more startups out there will really pay attention to their IP. And if they need anything, yes, feel free to get in touch with Vincent. And he's a very nice guy. He just, will happily share his knowledge with you. And one final comment from Andrew. Good to see you, buddy. Too bad no webcam.
That's Andrew again.
Yeah, we hoped you could have joined us on stream, but it's okay. Thank you for asking questions and being such a participating crowd today.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you once more, everyone. Have a good Saturday and enjoy the weekend. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.